Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. Well, here we are with the final episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. Here's my review and reactions to the episode. First of all, I have to talk a bit about what Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery has been like. I've gone on record as saying I really did enjoy Season 1. A lot of people didn't, but I really did. Along with a lot of other people, I think it should be said. It's a very vocal minority that didn't like it. I think a lot of other people did. But I also think that Season 2 is an improvement on Season 1. I really like a lot of the small changes that have been made, and part of that is some shakeups behind the scenes, and part of that is kind of responding to fan reaction and that sort of thing. But overall, I really like what they've done with this series. I really like the kind of small changes they've made and the direction that it seems to have gone in for this season. The introduction of a really great captain in Captain Pike. Anson Mount's performance of him has elevated him from, somebody who was in a failed pilot and used in some other footage for recycling in a later episode. And, the Kelvin timeline version of him, elevated the character a little bit. But I think it's Anson Mount's performance that has made him a really integral part of Star Trek canon and is the definitive Captain Pike for me now. So bravo to the producers for that decision and to Anson Mount for his portrayal of this iconic character. As for the finale itself, it is definitely visually stunning, some really great and poignant moments. Let's talk about the visuals first of all. The episode features a truly epic fight between the forces of Control in Section 31 and the starships Discovery and Enterprise and their allies that we'll talk a little bit about later in the video. Little touches that I really liked. We've got these gorgeous blue phaser beams that look like the TOS phasers from the original series here. I thought that was a really nice touch. And, as the camera zooms in on the phaser beams, you get that original series sound effect of them firing as well. I have to say, visually, a lot of the battle scenes reminded me a lot of Battlestar Galactica, the rebooted series, another series that I really enjoy. Some of those scenes obviously have taken their visual cues from that series. I do have to say a lot of the battle scenes, especially once Burnham leaves Discovery and is flying in the Red Angel suit being escorted by the shuttles, I found it very difficult to kind of track what was going on. There was so much happening in the frame, and it was hard to track where's Burnham in all of this, what's going on. And I know some of that is by design. It's supposed to look very frenzied and really hard to follow, but it was almost a little bit too much so, in my opinion. There's just so much going on in each frame of this episode, but it does really convey that sense of frenetic activity and that there is so much going on here. So most of the episode is action, of course, as they're battling Section 31 and Burnham and Spock are trying to get the Red Angel suit working and figure out what they have to do to get the data taken out of their time. But at the same time, there are also some really great character moments throughout the episode. Obviously not as many as last week. Last week was very much focused on those character moments. This week we do get a few really good ones, however. Stamets and Culber, for one thing. There's a moment where Stamets is injured and taken to sick bay, and Culber shows up and has to put him into a medically induced coma to save his life. And throughout that scene, it had this weird eerie quality because, of course, Stamets is kind of out of it. He's, not all there. And I was really worried that he was imagining this. And then by the end of the episode, we see that Stamets is in the coma and Culber is still there, looking after him. So I'm pretty sure it's not a dream sequence, but I was really worried that it was just his imagination. But it looks like Culber has returned to Discovery and gone with them into the future for Season 3. Also, some great character moments between Spock and Burnham. I'm going to kind of jump to the end of the episode here where it's apparent that Spock can't follow them through the wormhole, can't return to Discovery, and will have to remain behind and separated from Burnham. And there's a really great scene where Burnham's giving her little brother some advice, and it's very clear. She's saying to Spock, seek out the person who's very different from you and learn from them. And it's clear that she's talking about Kirk. None of them know that they're talking about Kirk. She's just this hypothetical someone in the future, but we know that he will do that and he will go on and lead a wonderful life. And I love that, Burnham has this influence over the rest of his life here, even though she won't be in it going forward from now on. So going back to the battle, we get, of course, like I said, this epic showdown between the two forces, and we get some allies, some of them expected and some of them unexpected. I really was totally expecting the Klingons to show up. I wasn't expecting them to bring that big, huge, cloakable Klingon cleave ship from way back at the start of season 1, but still, that was some nice continuity. I'm glad they brought that back. And, there's some real joy moments with the Klingons, which, everything with the Klingons seems to have been really serious and dark. And in this instance, we get a bit of that, Klingon lust for battle with L'Rell being really excited to go into battle, yelling, "Today is a good day to die," and, we're going to wade through the bodies of our enemies and stuff like that. And I really liked Mary Chieffo in this one. She really let loose and got to inhabit that character and have a lot more fun with that character than is normally the case. The one question I did have about the Klingons coming into battle, though, however, was the last time we saw L'Rell, she was so adamant that Tyler couldn't be seen with the Klingons and, be known to be alive to the Klingons. Has that changed? Is that okay now? Or is it just L'Rell's family that's on that ship and they're still keeping it a secret somehow? Like, what's going on? And they seemed, they just didn't address that at all. So I found myself in that scene kind of wondering, like, what's changed there and why is that the case? Maybe I missed something. Let me know in the comments if I did, but it seems to have not been addressed here. The unexpected allies are the Kelpians, led by Serana, who has apparently learned how to fly a Ba'ul fighter, which leads to some questions. Have the Kelpians risen up and overtaken the Ba'ul and stolen their technology? Like, what's going on Kaminar? Have they unleashed the Kelpians on an unsuspecting galaxy for them to conquer? Are they, that much more aggressive now? But I like to think that they and the Ba'ul are cooperating. The whole goal was to strike a new balance, like they said. So hopefully that's happened and they haven't just, murdered all the Ba'ul and taken over their technology. I loved a lot of the secondary characters. Poe had some great moments in this as she commandeers a shuttle. I thought in the last episode that they would actually use her ability to become invisible and disappear in the fight against Leland aboard the Discovery or something like that. But no, she's commandeered a shuttle somehow and is taking part in the battle and, realizes certain things that other people aren't able to realize and kind of helps turn the tide in the battle a bit. So that was really cool. She had some great moments. Jet Reno, I love that she's still a character here and she's being used. She's gone to the future with them. Will she be a more central character in season 3? I would love to see that. I really hope that that's the case. And number 1, Rebecca Romaine as number 1, I think is really excellent in this episode as well. I also know I've already gushed a bit about Pike, but I want to talk about another little aspect of his performance here. The fact that he knows his future, that he's going to become confined to the wheelchair with the horrific accident. It's made him, like I kind of wondered, a little bit headstrong, a little bit more willing to take risks because he knows that this is going to happen in the future. And I liked that there was a little bit of exploration of that with the torpedo that impacts the Enterprise, that, he basically says if he's in the room, it's not going to go off because he's seen his future. But Cornwell kind of talks him down and says, do you really know that for sure? Is that for sure? Because are you willing to stake the lives of the entire crew on that? And I thought that was a really interesting exploration. You see on his face, he's willing to risk his own life, but he's not willing to risk the lives of his crew. So he ultimately does leave the room. And when Admiral Cornwell volunteers to stay behind and close the door from the inside and allow the torpedo to detonate with her in the room. I'm really sad to see this character go. I love Cornwell. It's possible we might not be returning to the 23rd century, at least not in Discovery. So you could say we're leaving all these characters behind, but it's still really sad to see her go. I do wonder about this blast door. That seems like a really good blast door that it can close, and through a transparent part in the door, Pike can stand, feet away from this torpedo that blows up and takes about a quarter of the saucer section of the Enterprise with it. But because this blast door is down, he's fine and everything there is fine. That seemed odd to me and kind of a strange choice. It does continue the Star Trek tradition of emotional goodbyes through a transparent barrier, but seemed like an odd choice. That didn't make a lot of sense physics-wise. So a few little issues that I had with this episode that, I want to watch it again and kind of let these issues slide and just enjoy the episode, but they did bug me while I was watching it the first time. First of all, where the heck do all these shuttles come from? There seem to be so many shuttlecraft and pods and fighters. There can't be that many aboard the Discovery and the Enterprise. They said there was like 200 ships or something like that. That seems crazy. I guess they're weaponizing the escape pods and stuff too or something, but that was just so many shuttles. Another issue I had was with Burnham setting the 7 signals, what eventually turns out to be 7. Right now it's just the 5 that she knows of. First of all, this is a bootstrap paradox, which I don't have a problem with. I think bootstrap paradoxes are really interesting. She learned of the 5 signals by seeing them, by experiencing them on each of those missions, so now she knows to go back and set them. But who came up with the idea in the first place? So, because it just seems to come out of nowhere. I think this is a really cool science fiction concept. I have no problem with that. However, the one issue I did have is at the start of the season, they see all 7 signals at once in the sky and throughout the galaxy. And that's not how they appeared. They appeared at those places at different times, and we see Burnham setting them. So, how did they know that there was the 7 signals to look for if they didn't all appear at the beginning of the show? I think there's a way to do it. It's just we didn't get that explanation in this episode, which kind of bugged me a little bit. There's some mostly good dialogue in this episode. There are a couple odd choices, though. For me, the big standout was when Commander Non says yum yum to Burnham about the idea of killing Leland, basically. That line just struck a wrong chord with me. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently when I rewatch it, but it just really kind of threw me out of the episode there. It was an odd choice. And finally, the last issue I had, I think, again, this one's explainable, though. They said in the last episode that the time crystal would overload after a single use, but Burnham does use it to go back in time 5 different times to 5 different locations to set the signals. I suppose they meant that the crystal would overload when they use it to create a wormhole big enough to take her and the Discovery hundreds of years in the future, and maybe these smaller jumps to just, months and weeks earlier won't do that. I would have liked just a line to explain that, though, because I was like, how is she going to set the signals if they can only use it once and then it overloads? But I guess that's not exactly the issue they had. So, all right, let's talk about the ending now. So this was the game changer that they were speaking about, the total changing of the premise of Star Trek Discovery, it looks like. The ship and crew are taken out of the 23rd century and moved forward 950 years or so into the future, removing Discovery, removing the spore drive, removing Michael Burnham from the timeline now. Not erasing their history. They still had their impact and that sort of thing, but going forward, they will not be mentioned and all that sort of stuff. As far as Discovery and the spore drive, that makes sense. I knew they would have to get rid of the spore drive somehow. And now with the entire only operating spore drive, plus the only scientist who really understands it and the only guy who is genetically modified to be able to operate it, moved into the future, I guess the spore drive just is not a thing anymore and will not be. That's fine. Okay, that explains it. I get it. Burnham was never really a problem in my mind. As we've learned from Spock over the years, he never discusses his family anyway, so it didn't seem odd to me that he had an adopted sister that he'd never told anybody about. He didn't even tell Kirk that his parents were Sarek and Amanda until they had visited the Enterprise in season 2. We didn't know about Sybok, etc., etc., etc. There's all these examples. So I didn't think that was a really big deal, but it's taken care of now. She's separated from Spock, and I do have to say I really like that all of the farewells and goodbyes in the last episode and this episode aren't put to waste. There isn't an 11th hour, reset button that saves them all and makes them be able to stay in the 23rd century. That's all gone. They're gone. They're out of time. They're in the future now. So that was an interesting choice for sure. I also thought it was a very interesting choice not to show Discovery in the future. I actually kind of like that choice. It gives just a little bit of mystery. We don't see everybody okay and hunky-dory in the future. We do know for sure that Burnham made it because she sends the seventh signal to Spock. However, we don't know that Discovery successfully followed her. We do know that, of course, because there will be a Discovery Season 3, and Alex Kurtzman has already said that it will follow Discovery into the future 950 years and pick up from there. But as far as the characters are concerned, they don't really know for sure that Discovery made it. They just know that Burnham made it. So I thought that was an interesting choice. There's another YouTuber, Steve Shives. I really love his Star Trek videos. He did a recent one where he rewrote the finale to Star Trek Voyager, and he had kind of a similar choice where in his version, the crew uses the transporter to beam through a micro wormhole back to Earth. And Janeway is the last one to leave the ship, and they set the auto-destruct for it to explode before she leaves. And, you know, her last line, she taps her badge and says, "Janeway to Starfleet Command, 1 to beam home," and disappears. Camera fades to black, end of the story, and you don't see Voyager explode, which I thought was an interesting choice as well. So this is kind of similar. There's just that little bit of a question mark at the end, which I really like. I think that's a bit of a brave choice. I think it would be an easier choice to just show Discovery and, you know, have that kind of bit of wrapping up at the end, but they don't. They leave it open, and I really like that. I think that was a great creative choice. Meanwhile, we're left behind in the 23rd century to see the Enterprise set off on new adventures in that century under the command of Captain Pike. We get the Shorn and be uniformed Spock. So, you know, that's kind of come full circle. I knew we would. And plus there was that picture leaked, but I didn't want to mention that, but I really like that we end on that note. And then at the very end, the melding of the TOS and the Discovery theme music over the closing credits, I thought was a really nice touch. And it's one of the more recent tracks of Star Trek that I really want to get my hands on. I would love that piece of music. I think that was really appropriate, really well done. So here we go. That is the end of season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, but I want to hear, what did you guys think of it? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Were the issues that I brought up issues you had as well? Or were there things that I missed that you had issues with? Or do you not agree with my issues and think they're no big deal and just unabashedly loved the episode? Let me know in the comments below. I really did enjoy it. I've overall enjoyed the season, and I find myself really not being able to wait for season 3. But in the meantime, we'll have other things. We have the Picard series. We have the short treks coming as well before that even. So lots of new Star Trek to talk about. And I look forward to talking about all of it with all of you. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks to the Patreon supporters for your help in bringing these videos to you. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you all in the next video. And until next time, as always, live long and prosper.